Welcome to the Super Healthy Human Podcast with your host, Dr. Roger Murphree.
Hi, welcome. This is Dr. Roger Murphree, your host of the Super Healthy Human Podcast. My guest today is Aimee Carlson. She's a lifetime entrepreneur. She's the owner and operator of a multi-location national franchise. She went from that to being a professional network marketer, a best-selling author, and she hosts the podcast, The Toxin Terminator. She's a certified Toxicity and Detox Specialist. A lot of your work, it's we start talking about toxins and detoxification. Sometimes it gets really nerdy, and I'm guilty of that, being kind of a biochemical nerd. But I think there's such a disconnect between people's health and taking responsibility for their health, that this topic, I think, is really a timely topic. If any time we've ever had the challenges of toxic stress, this would be now. So thanks so much for joining us on this podcast. I really look forward to spending some time with you.
I am excited to be here, and thank you for sharing this message out to the world. This is something that we all are doing our part in and truly choosing to share our words of wisdom and health and healing for the masses. So thank you.
Okay. The Toxic Terminator. I love it. Catchy. I love it. So tell me, how in the world did you get interested in detoxification? I mean, how did this come about?
You bet. So I worked for 30 years in the automotive industry. I was a certified mechanic, and I was the only 100% female-owned automotive franchise in North America in my reign of that 30 years. And I was in a very toxic environment, physically, emotionally, and all the chemicals that we were surrounded by. And my adult life, I ran into a lot of, just odd things happening to my body, chronic diseases going on with my body. And what I knew, I had exposures in what I did for my work, right? And I also knew how highly regulated the automotive industry was. We had two governing bodies watching over us to make sure that we were doing what we said we were going to do. But what I wasn't aware of was the hidden toxins that were impacting my overall health as well. And for me, I had headaches every single day of my life, my adult life. I had migraine headaches that finally by the end took the vision away on the left side of my, I could not see anything on the left side, not just while the migraine was happening, but all the time. I had lots and lots of reproductive issues, and I won't go into the gory details with that, but I was diagnosed in menopause at the age of 36, and most women go into menopause at 47. So lots of endocrine disruptors in my environment. And I learned about natural health and wellness quite by mistake. It was an accidental opportunity. I kept getting invited to attend an essential oils class. And I thought, you guys are crazy. I mean, that's stuff that, hippies that don't shower and bathe. And I'm not interested in this at all. But I went. And apparently I had a little bit of an open mind to actually hear and understand what was being taught to me. And I thought, maybe there's something to this, because I have been floating from doctor to doctor, specialist to specialist. I have been put on countless medications that didn't help. They ended up actually taking my uterus out. I had other symptoms and health issues because of medications that I was on. So I thought, why not? I have nothing left to lose. They're telling me there's nothing they can do for me. It's all in my head, or even worse. And so I started digging in and I started learning. And I say today that essential oils were my gateway drug to a healthy lifestyle, and they truly were. And the more I dug in and the more I learned, the more pissed I got. I was so upset with what I was learning. Remember, I had 30 years in the automotive industry, highly regulated. We had agencies coming in, monitoring everything we do. Folks, when it comes to what we use inside of our home, there is not one government agency that is testing the safety of what we use. The philosophy behind our government when it comes to the products in our home is prove it's not safe, not prove it's safe. And I wanted to give it a voice, and I wanted to teach the masses. And so that's why I started the podcast, and that's why I wrote the book.
That's great. Great. What a great story. Oftentimes I'll use this analogy that people, they really don't know really how the body works. They really don't know much about health. And it's a shame. It's how, and they're in a terrible position when they go to a healthcare professional because they're at their mercy. It's like me coming to you as if you were still in the auto business, me going to the mechanic. I know nothing about cars. And every time I go to get my car checked, I'm always thinking, are they going to take advantage of me? Am I going to get good advice? And, you always feel vulnerable. And that's how I think the public is about their health, is they really don't understand it. And there's such a disconnect to it. And that's why I like the fact that you're sharing things that people probably don't really think about how it impacts their health, but there's things that they can do. They can be proactive and they can take steps on their own that can make a huge difference in their health journey.
Absolutely. And I equate it to when I was in the automotive world. In that world, it's like the dealers are the gods of the automotive world. What they say is golden and no one should question it. And in the medical field, it's the doctors, the allopathic doctors that are considered and held up on that pedestal, that what they say is the ultimate end to all beings. And so therefore we should just accept and do what they say to do without question. And when we've got the fourth leading cause of death in the United States, medical error, I say question. I'm not saying don't do. I think allopathic medicine is wonderful and a much needed practice that we have to have, but don't go in blindly and don't just accept, ask the questions and get to know who's working with you and on your body and for your body so that you can make the best possible decisions that you can.
Absolutely. So I like the title of your book. So 5 Pillars of Living a Toxin-Free Lifestyle. So can we go over what are the 5 pillars? Can we get those out there? Yeah.
You bet. So the 5 pillars of living a toxin-free lifestyle are air, water, food, absorption, what we're putting on our skin, and mental. Oh boy, we can fix all this out here, but if we don't fix up here, oh boy, are we in trouble, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's start with the first one. So air. Let's talk about air. What do we need to know about the toxins that are in our air that we're breathing right now?
Sure. What I like to do is give everybody kind of my top tips for each category. We don't have enough time to go through all of them, but in the air, what we're breathing in, we really want to look at fragrance. Now, fragrance is considered the new secondhand smoke. It is a neurological toxin. It is a respiratory toxin as well as an endocrine toxin. So this is what's affecting our hormones. Now, I'm sure you're seeing in your practice, and I see with the clients that I work with, I even have a granddaughter that is 9 years old. And she is about ready to start puberty. She's already getting breasts. And that is just unthinkable to me, that our children are coming into this phase of life this early, but it's happening.
Right.
Because of all the xenoestrogens that we're breathing in through the air, through the fragrance, right? So fragrance is kind of one of those things that is protected under proprietary trade secrets. So we have no idea what chemicals are in that one word when we see it on the product label. They have, I believe they're up to 42,000 different chemicals that they can use within that one designated word. Most times it's usually about 200 that they're using. And so this is a problem for consumers, is we just don't have the education to understand what's in there. And synthetic fragrances cause lots of neurological issues. So think about if you have anxiety, stress, it's situations that you just can't seem to grab a hold of. If you have forgetfulness, brain fog, and then of course endocrine, are children getting into puberty early? Do you have infertility issues? Is your cycle off? These are things that are happening because we're using fragrance in the home. Migraines, headaches, what I suffered from, right? And then of course, respiratory. I think about the women and men that are professional cleaners that are subject to so many of these things that they're using on a daily basis and the damage that they're causing to their lungs. They say now, science has proven that using cleaners with fragrance in them is like smoking a pack of cigarettes a day.
Mm.
It
Wow.
is.
Wow.
Yeah, scary stuff. So my tip for you, I'm sorry, I went off onto all the science geek out stuff with it, but my tip for you all is buy products that are fragrance free. You see, when they have something labeled unscented, it still has all of the chemicals for the fragrance, and then they add more chemicals on top of that to take the smell away. So we want to look for products that are fragrance free. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now you mentioned xenoestrogens. So a lot of people don't really know that term, but that's a chemical that mimics estrogen and binds to an estrogen receptor in the body. And that can create estrogen dominance, which can create all sorts of issues, whether that's problems with your menstrual cycle or infertility or fibroid tumors, and it can affect your thyroid. There's all kinds of things that can happen with that. And what you're saying, Aimee, is that we're seeing adolescents or young children, not even adolescents, who are starting to get into puberty much sooner than they should, just because they're coming in contact with these estrogen-like chemicals in the environment.
Right. And these can be passed down from generation to generation. This is why it's so important. As a woman, I think about my grandchildren. I think about, am I setting a good example and teaching them what they can do to make an impact for not only their health, but the health of the generations to come. So it's really important that we take a look at this. And if we look around the world, in the world right now, and I'm pull me in if you want to, we're dealing with a pandemic. Yes, absolutely, we're dealing with a pandemic. But the bigger picture is that we're also dealing with a very sick society. 6 out of 10 adults have a chronic disease today. And out of those 6 people, 70% of those have 2 or more. Now, this is why something like a coronavirus can take hold and just move through our society as a whole, because our host, the body, is so sick in our society today. And there's great things that we can do. Getting rid of fragrance, huge thing. I have not had a migraine headache since I got rid of fragrance in the products that I use inside my home. One simple change.
Yeah, fantastic. So the second one is water. Was that right? It was air, then water was number 2. Is that right?
Yep, water. And we can go out of order just so that we get the 5 pillars. So water. Here's my water. I really want you to be thinking about heavy metals. Heavy metals are very concentrated in water, and we know heavy metals really affect the body. So the tip for water is the EWG.org has a tab on their website called water. Who knew? Click on that. What you can do is type in your city's zip code, and it will tell you what your municipality tests for, what components are in that water. And then from there, you can identify what kind of water filtration system do I need, because there's different ones. There's carbon, there is reverse osmosis, there's UV lights. There's several different ways that we can filter our water based upon what is inside the water. So I encourage everybody to check that out, and then you'll be able to make a good decision for what you have in your house in the water. And the second tip on water is drinking water is important, but don't forget about the whole house. What we shower in is really important, because we're standing in there. Our skin, and we'll talk about this in absorption, depending on the condition of the skin and the chemical that we're putting on it, we can find that in the bloodstream within 20 seconds to 2 minutes. Right? When we're in that shower, I don't know about you, but I don't take a 20-second shower. Mine lasts 5-10 minutes. It depends. And so we're opening up the pores of the body, and we are just absorbing everything that's coming in. So really make sure that you look at a whole house filtration system, not just your drinking water.
So when we talk about water, looking at drinking water first, people should realize that no matter what their municipal system, what it says in their zip code or whatever about how clean that water is, they need to realize that even the cleanest water in America is going to test positive for prescription drugs, birth control pills, all sorts of things that are contaminants that are in the water system. Even if you got the cleanest water, New York's supposed to have clean water, Birmingham, Alabama is supposed to have clean water. I would never drink this water because I know all the impurities that are in there that they can't get out. I don't want to be drinking someone's Viagra or someone's birth control pill, So water can be incredibly toxic. And I totally agree with you. I think the easiest thing to do is just get some kind of filtration system. Here, we've been using alkaline water, antioxidant water we have an antioxidant alkaline water machine. We've been using for at least a decade. And then the other thing about people don't realize is this chlorine, all the chlorine that's in the water. So when you take a shower, as you mentioned, you're absorbing that chlorine. Thousands of people die every year from hydrochloroform poisoning from this hot water and the chlorine that's being emitted from the shower. That's kind of scary.
It is very scary. And you think about, I want your audience to understand how chlorine affects the body. We think about who gets in a hot tub. We're down low in that water. Usually they're cleaned with some sort of a chlorine use of some sort. Even when you have a salt water pool, you're still getting some sort of chlorine in there. Many times the overheating, it isn't just temperature that is causing damage to our body. It's we're so low and we're breathing in that chlorine over and over again when we're sitting in that water. The same thing's happening. There's fluoride in our water sources as well that's causing neurological damage to our bodies. So lots and lots of things inside the water, and we just want to make sure that we're filtering them out. Even bottled water has contaminants in it. Not to mention the BPAs and the plastics, but they're not, some of them are far less clean than what's coming out of your tap water. So I use a combination filtration system. I soften the water, but I have charcoal filtration that's happening before it even gets into the softener. I have a UV light that is killing off all of the chemicals inside there. And then lastly, we'd use a reverse osmosis system. So it's going through several different filtration systems so I can be sure that I'm getting the medications, the pharmaceutical, or the pesticides out of there. I'm getting the heavy metals out. All of the VOCs are getting eliminated from the water that we're drinking and bathing in.
So what would be the simplest thing for someone to do, to change their if they're drinking tap water right now? Bottled water to me is a scam. I mean, it's coming right out of a tap. So it's probably not any healthier than what you're drinking out of tap water, and it's costing you more than probably if you're out on the street buying cocaine, which I hope you're not. But I mean, it's ridiculous. The price of bottled water, what it costs them to make. What are some simple things other than, obviously you and I have gone some extra steps, but is there, just having a counter filtration system on their kitchen water? Is that sufficient?
Yeah, there's good, better, best, right?
Yeah, right.
A counter filtration system is going to be better than drinking the tap water or bottled water, right? We've taken a step into the right direction. So you can find all kinds. Berkey, Aquasana, both have fantastic filtering systems that you can use. There's countertops. There's ones if you just want to do an under sink mount where you're not using a pitcher pour, right? Pitcher pour would be like your first option. And then you can get to the whole house. Now, if you can't do a whole house system, There are also shower filters heads.
Right.
So sauna sells them. You can, put it right into there. It's super easy to do. And now you're filtering what's coming into the shower. So lots of different options. You don't have to go to whole house. And a lot of companies out there that actually rent the equipment for a whole house. Say you're in an apartment or something that you're leasing and you want to be able to take it with you. There are companies out there that do that too.
Right. So there's different options for whatever you want to do. You can start for probably a nominal fee, and then you can, as you want to become more sophisticated, then those products are out there. Those products and services. Okay, so we've gone over 2 of the 5 pillars. What's number 3?
Number 3 is food. So again, just like in our air and water, we have so much toxicity within our food. Pesticide is the big one that we all think about, right? But we've got GMOs, and we have food colorings and dyes, and we have food flavorings. Basically, if you're buying anything from a box, pre-made up, it's kind of what we call frankenfood. It's not really even nutritionally valuable to your body. So my tip for you on food is buy organic. Organic is better than buying food that is non-organic. They still are allowed some chemicals to be used in the growing process, the harvesting process, and throughout the term of from seed to end product, but it's limited in what they can use. The optimal solution with our food is to get to know your farmer, grow your own, or go to an area where you've got great farmer markets and talk with them and find out what their process is. That ultimately is your best option, even beyond organic. And then the simplest way to start with reducing the toxic load from our food is to use the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. I hear from so many people, I can't afford to buy all organic. And I understand, I hear you. And so the Clean 15 and Dirty Dozen is a great option for you to say, okay, here's what I can do, right now at this space and this time that I'm at. The other thing is think about, what do you eat every day? If you're eating bananas every day, then by golly, bananas should probably be organic for you, right?
Yeah.
Blueberries every day, probably want to make sure that those are organic. Think about the things that we purchase on a daily basis and consume.
And I think, the whole thing about trying to eat organic is something my family's done for probably 10 years. It's so much easier now. And people, I'll have patients that will say, well, it's expensive. You're either going to spend it on being sick eventually, or you can invest it in getting healthy and staying healthy. To me, it's worth the few pennies. But the choices now, now you can go to Walmart, you can go to Target, Sam's Club, Costco. The big box stores, they have a lot of organic produce now that they did not before. But at the very least, just Aimee, what you mentioned, is eat real food. That's what I recommend, is stick to the outside aisles of the supermarket. And if you do that, you're going to be eating pretty clean. It's when you get in the middle aisles with all the packaged foods, with all the colorings. Oh my gosh, when I see some people checking out in their carts and they've got these colored waters, Gatorade and blue Powerade and, the whole thing of Cokes. My kids have never, well, I'm sure they have on the sly, but rarely have my 3 children ever had soft drinks. It's just not something we ever allowed in the house. It's just not a healthy thing to do. But you certainly can eat healthier than you're eating now. And it can make a big difference in how you feel.
Absolutely. 2 things I want to add to that, if I may, real quick, is number 1 is the freezer aisle is your friend when it comes to organic as well. There's lots of organic options in the freezer aisle, much cheaper than the fresh, and many times are much fresher and more nutrient dense than what the fresh products are themselves. So I encourage people to look that up. And when we say, I can't afford, again, that's a mindset thing. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But I love this saying, and I don't know, doctor, if you've heard this one, but we have a million wishes every day. Every day we have a million wishes. Without our health, we have but one.
Great. Love it. Love it. Okay, so we've talked about 3 of the pillars, and now we're moving to number 4.
Absorption. So we have to think about what we put on our skin. Our skin is the largest organ of our body. And if we wouldn't put it in our mouth, why in the world would we put it on our skin? Because it's going to the same place, friends. It's going to get inside that body, and we want to make sure what we're using is safe. 4 major ingredients I encourage you to avoid when it comes to absorption, and that are parabens, sulfates, phthalates, and fragrance. Again, these are 4 big ones that we want to avoid. And I get it. We don't want to become these, chemical engineers and need to understand every ingredient that is inside of these products. It's not my forte. It might be yours, but there's an easy button that we can use, and that's called Think Dirty. Have you heard of that app?
No, say that again. Let me make sure we get that on here.
Think Dirty.
Think Dirty. Great, great. Tell us about that.
So a woman created this app when her mom got breast cancer. We know that in breast cancer, they did a study, and in every single tumor, there were parabens found, every single one of them. And she thought, where is this coming from and what is happening? So she developed this app when she found out that the products we're using every single day in our home are full of these toxic ingredients. And what it is you can scan or type in your product, whether it be laundry soap or shampoo or toothpaste or your cleaning product, and it's going to give you a rating from 0 to 10, 0 meaning it's completely safe, and 10 meaning you do not want that inside your home. Now that's great, but they go even a step further. They're going to break it out, and they're calling out the ingredients to you. They're going to tell you exactly why it gets the rating it does, what is the ingredient inside of it, and what does that ingredient do to the body. It's the best educational tool that I can give to anybody.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you shared that with me. That's wonderful. I'm going to make sure to get that out there to my audience and use it. That's wonderful. What an app. I do want to go back because you mentioned the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen, and that's something that's published every year. And but people can Google that. So you can Google those terms, and it'll pop up and it'll tell you what produce you really don't have to be too concerned about being organic, whether that's pineapple or I think broccoli. There's several onions, and then ones that you really need to be eat organic because they're overly processed with pesticides like kale of all things, right?
Right. And here's the thing too, again, use the tools. That's all we want to do. When we're looking to be healthy, we need tools. We need a toolbox full so we can look at it and say, okay, this is the one I need to use for this application. And that's what you do. That's what I do. That's what so many people in our space do, is we're just giving you the smorgasbord, and you get to pick and choose what you put into your toolbox so that you can make the best choices for yourself and your family.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what's number 5? So if we've gone over 4, what's number 5?
Mental.
Mental, that's right. Probably the most challenging one, right? Stinking thinking, as Zig Ziglar used to say.
Oh, love Zig Ziglar. So we've got stinking thinking. Here's the thing I want people to understand. When it comes to mental, it is a toxin. We can have toxic thoughts. We can have toxic words. We can have toxic actions. They all come from what's going on inside that brain of ours. And it's a tough one. This is a tough one to walk people through. But what I want them to understand is that you do not have to be victim to what is processing inside your head. I call it the committee. I've got this committee inside my head, and I have a choice. I can choose that I'm going to focus on things that are going to serve me well, whether it's my physical being, my emotional being, my spiritual being, or I can choose to focus on those things that are just going to take me down. We have that choice, and our reality becomes the thoughts that we think, to the words that we speak out loud, to the actions that we do. So it all starts here in the brain. It all starts here. And so if we don't learn how to control these thoughts and say, no, this is not what I'm going to do today, then the actions outside in our reality can never change. Or this was a really hard one for me to do. And I'll share with you a really quick story if you're okay with that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So my husband and I both worked at home at this time. This is probably, I don't know, 10 years ago. And he said to me one day, he's like, do you realize how much negativity comes out of your mouth? And I said, you know, I guess I've never really paid attention to that, honey. And he's like, you are. You speak a lot of negativity. And I thought, ooh, that's not good. I don't want to be doing that. And so we incorporated what we call stop, drop, and roll. Do you remember being in grade school and the police department or the fire department came in and they taught you how to, you know, if you're on fire, you want to stop, you want to drop to the ground and then roll around, right? This is how we put the fire out. This is how we put the fire out in Aimee's brain is we incorporated. So and we worked, our offices were real close to each other, and he'd say, Aimee, and that was my clue. And I literally got out of my chair, dropped to the ground, and rolled on the ground. Now, you're working in a public place, might not work so well for you, but I needed that physical action to really stop my brain in its track of what's going on. And now I tend to catch myself. I've even caught myself a few times when we're talking. I choose not to use the words try, want, need. These are coming from a place of scarcity. And I've learned this through different things that I've gone through in my journey, that I'm very careful with the words that I select to use.
That's great. That's great. You know, I really encourage my patients and those who follow me to do an hour of power every day. And some people can't do an hour. I mean, I think you can find an hour, but some people will use an excuse. I don't have an hour, Dr. Murphree, but you know, you can find half an hour, you can find a quarter hour, but that time is where you really go, you know, into yourself and, you know, through prayer, meditation, you know, where there's reading positive material. This is a time where you really just want to be able to settle everything down that sets you up for the rest of the day. So that when you do get in a situation where you're finding yourself complaining and being negative, you get to where eventually you can start catching yourself do that, and you can just turn that off, because 99% of the time our worry, you know, what we're worried about never even manifests. It never even shows up. So we're just spending so much time with these toxic thoughts that if we can learn to catch them, just like you said, stop, what was that? Stop, drop, and roll. I don't know if I could do that in the clinic, but you know, again, it's a mindset, right? It's a mindset, just being aware of it. Number one.
It really is. And there's lots of techniques that really help us focus in on that. Now, you said an hour a day, and I'm with some of your clients to say, oh, Dr. Murphree, I have not an hour a day, but you do have 5 minutes. Yeah. You do have 5 minutes. So 5 minutes, when I'm laying in bed, before I ever get out of that bed, I'm laying there, I breathe in for 4 seconds, I hold it for 7 seconds, and I release it for 8. And I do that 5, 6 times. That takes me 3 to 4 minutes to do, but I am just kind of getting myself going in that parasympathetic state before I even start my day. And I can do that repeatedly throughout the day. So maybe you don't have an hour altogether, but do you have 5 minutes? You know, can you take 15 minutes to start your day and start it with a devotional? And then for me, I go to prayer, I go to God's word, and then I go into journaling. And I'm always writing down what I'm grateful for every single day. because that helps me up here.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So, we've talked about the 5 pillars. What we really haven't talked a whole lot about as we start to wrap up is, these toxicity issues that people have. Jeffrey Bland, the father of functional medicine, called people, the walking wounded. These are the people who are walking around, may not have a diagnosis of any kind of illness, but they just don't feel good. They don't look good. These are the walking wounded who have toxicity issues that are driving their poor health that they can't seem to overcome. And
Right.
so we really hadn't talked about, but you've already mentioned your experience of the migraine headaches and just feeling exhausted, having the hysterectomy at a young age. Toxins that are stored in the body can, as you mentioned, be hormone disruptors, but they can cause all sorts of different illnesses. They're like the great masquerader. They can cause mood disorders, brain fog, neurological issues, autoimmune disease. If they don't cause those conditions, they certainly can trigger them or add fuel to the fire, right?
Well, absolutely. So my belief in the studying that I have done is that toxins are the #1 contributor to all disease and inflammation in the body. And if we don't take our hand off the fire and we're still putting it on that stove, when I touch something hot, I take a hot plate out of the stove and I get a burn. What do? I go rinse it under cold water. And for me, I put some lavender oil on there, right? I'm good. It's healed. But if I keep touching that hot plate, I don't get to heal it. It's going to blister. It's going to fester. I'm going to get 2nd degree, 3rd degree. It just continues to burn. And that's what we're doing to our bodies. The cell membranes get hardened and they get damaged. And so the messages don't get in and out. The toxins don't get in and out. And the receptors all around those cell membranes don't send the messages that they're supposed to send out, right? So the toxins are the trigger, that gets the body going. And we have all these symptoms ahead of time. The first thing we see is a change in body odor. Maybe it's your breath, maybe it's your armpits, maybe it's your urine or feces that's changing in odor. Our body is constantly sending us messages. We're not in tune to those messages. We got to start listening. Maybe we've got rashes that just develop all of a sudden and they're unexplained. We could have digestive issues. Digestive issues are big, telling us, hey, something's not right here. We need to take a look. That could be bloating, gas, diarrhea. Gas. Doctor, I used to have gas like you wouldn't believe, but so did my brother, so did my sister, so did my parents. And so I was like, well, it's just an ORD thing. This is what we do, right? No, it's not what we do. This is a problem with us. And I think that's what so many people out there is, well, I'm over 50 and we just start getting aches and pains. We're more tired. We don't sleep as well. All my friends are doing it. We normalize not feeling good. Instead of listening to what the body's telling us, we normalize that. And so we have no idea what feeling good truly feels like. I'm 56 years old and I am in the best health of my life. I have more energy, better sleep, and I wear a ring that tells me the things I do daily, how it's affecting my overall well-being. So we can make lots of changes. And there's lots of signals that our bodies are telling us if we choose to listen.
Unfortunately, in conventional medicine, this is not a conversation that usually comes up. There are environmental functional medicine doctors, DOs, whatever, that really specialize in toxicity issues, but they're few and far between. I mean, Dr. Rhea, there's Sherry Rogers, Detoxify or Die. I mean, she wrote all these books. I remember reading those early on, probably 20 years ago. But there's very few doctors in the conventional setting that even talk about toxicity issues. And yet we know that if you're carrying around these toxins, it has the potential to create all sorts of health problems. And it's similar. I think what you're saying, when I'm talking to my patients, I tell them, I use this analogy that we're all born with a bucket. And in that bucket, as we go through life, we're putting in toxins, foods that we eat, air that we breathe, chemicals we come in contact with, thoughts, toxic, stress. And so we're filling this bucket up. For most of us, we get a good night's sleep, we exercise, we meditate, we try to eat healthy. And that bucket continues to have a buffer, it has some leadway there. But as you go through life, if you're not careful, these toxins build up. And then when they overflow the bucket, that's when you start to develop food allergies. That's when you start to develop seasonal allergies. That's when you start to develop rosacea or rashes or things that, you never had. You're 48 years old and now you can eat 6 foods now. And it all goes back to the fact that for, 47 of those years, your body was able to take the toxins in, get rid of them, or keep enough of a buffer there that you could manage. But what I really encourage people to do, which is what you do in your book so well in your courses, is to think about, okay, if your bucket is here and you've got this much room, what's going to happen if we can just get this toxins down to here? How are you going to feel? Wow. It's going to be, for most of you, it's going to be night and day, right?
Right. And our body was created magnificently. It has that detox system built into the body. And what you described, I like to think of it also as a sink, right? We have the sink that's leaking, and eventually it's going to pour over. And allopathic medicine is out here mopping up the spillway, right? They're over here mopping up the spills. And instead of, don't you think it would make more sense to stop the drip?
Yeah.
Let's go in and stop the drip. And that's why if you're not getting anywhere with your allopathic doctors, go to a functional medicine doctor. Seek out those kinds of help where we're going to get to the root cause. Don't just stick a Band-Aid on it and think that it's going to go away, because if we haven't taken our hand off the fire and we're not doing the things to support the detox funnel system in our body, it's going to come back. It's going to come back, and it's going to come back with a vengeance.
Yeah, I think that in my practice and probably the clients that you see, it's, these are the medical misfits. These are the, kind of the people that have been everywhere, tried everything, and they can't get well. And a big part of that is because, there's no drug that's going to take away, heavy metal toxicity. There's no drug that's going to take away paraben toxins or estrogen dominance. So you've got to think of it in a different mindset, a different paradigm, in that you want to clean yourself up, clean your body up. And as you do so, you're going to see a lot of the symptoms, which are nothing but warning signs that your body's not working correctly. You're going to see that a lot of those are going to just disappear. And all it had to do with is just giving the body back the ability to heal itself, this innate, inborn, God-given ability to regulate the body and heal the body that's been compromised by these toxins.
Absolutely. Amen. That is exactly what happens.
Hey, well, tell me, we're going to, before we finish up, tell me a little bit. I know you've got some online classes, you got some free resources. What is the best website for them to go to, Aimee, and check out some of the free stuff and the online courses that you have?
For sure. So Transforming Women's Health, and it's all one word.com, is the best way for you to hook up with me, because from there, you're going to see all the different things that we offer. You can get in there and take our free toxic risk assessment. You can listen to the podcast. You can connect with us through social media. So every way that you can connect with me is through Transforming Women's with an S, health.com.
And I would encourage everyone to get the book. I mean, that's a book you want to have on hand and to go through and see what are the simple things that you can do to help you and your family live a healthier, happier, more enjoyable life, just by making sure that you're not, and you don't even realize it, exposing yourself to some of the toxins that we talked about today. Aimee, this has been great. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm I can't wait to learn more about your work, and I really appreciate some of the things that you shared today. Really, really some good clinical pearls today.
I appreciate it. You've been a great host.